Wow, my family's being loud. This is probably going to be so far the most uninformed episode that we have. But I feel it's necessary for me to start asking these questions so that we can start figuring this out and start constructing new constructs to take us into the future and to adapt ourselves, our cultures, our traditions towards the future. I mean, looking at how things are now, things operate absolutely differently from how they operated 30, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 500 years ago. And I think that some constructs just need to be looked at differently. There's a lot of things that come into play around human development. And I think that this one is somewhat overrated. And I feel we just need to start asking these questions and start thinking of, potential solutions. The questions, let me start it off this way. There's a lot of, oh, shout out to my sister, by the way, for the cute hat. I don't know what I'm talking about, but there's a lot of successful people around the world who grew up in a household with both their parents in a heterosexual relationship, and then they're married and they have siblings, brothers and sisters, or whatever, or maybe they're the only child and they grew up in a good school, there's support and all of that stuff. There's many successful people around the world who grew up under the care of their mother only. Perhaps they didn't know where their father is. Maybe their father was in and out of jail. Maybe they just didn't want the kid. All those type of stuff. There's a lot of successful people out there who were raised by single fathers. I cannot think of one right now, but I bet there is. There's a lot of successful people out there who were not even raised by neither of their parents. Either their parents died or their parents left them, or some or other explanation to what landed them in some home somewhere in the streets, or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of successful people who grew up in that sort of situation. There's a lot of unsuccessful people who grew up in a healthy heterosexual family relationship with the parents and the siblings and all that. There's a lot of unsuccessful people who grew up with a mother only, a lot of unsuccessful people with a father only, a lot of unsuccessful people who grew up without either of them. And I guess now, looking at the time that has passed since the world started accepting homosexuality, I'd like to believe there are some examples of successful people who grew up in homosexual families, where you'd assume that perhaps they were adopted by two men or by two women, and they raised them, and maybe they had brothers or sisters or not, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but I think that maybe there should be some successful people. Actually, there's definitely some successful people who grew up in those type of situations. The question or the challenge then becomes from me that, do we really still need to adhere to the construct of a family unit? Or maybe alternatively, does our ideology of a family unit still stand? Is it still necessary in this day and age, looking at all the information that we have, the speed of which that information is transferred, the differences that exist in mindsets and the changes that happen along the way? So many things really work against a setting or a construct that does not nurture change. The way things change, the way things move, the way things evolve in this day and age is so quick that I feel and think that perhaps we just need to be more open in terms of the family construct and just think about how maybe it can be done differently. I mean, some years ago, we started saying, okay, you know what? A family can be made up of a man and a man. We can now have a man and a man getting into marriage and starting a family, adopting kids, or maybe getting surrogates or whatever it is that they do, and raising a family. That wasn't a family construct that was acceptable before that, but at some point it started getting acceptable. And in some countries, it's not yet acceptable, but every day we start to get an adoption and an understanding of that type of family construct. You also have the same situation with female to female type thing happening. And what I'm trying to get at is we have a lot of single parents these days. Either the parents just separated, or maybe one was raped, or maybe they had a baby unplanned, and maybe the guy left, or maybe the guy said, okay, let's get an abortion, and the woman didn't want to. Um, in my case, there was one who got pregnant and then decided she's breaking up with me because she's pregnant and I'm gonna go away. I'm like, but like I'm here. I'm not going away. I'm right here. What do you mean? So I'm assuming maybe around the world there are people suffering from that. Maybe they want to be a part of their children's families, but the woman just doesn't want that. That doesn't want that. They just want to be by themselves. And I think that in the world where so much happens so quickly and a lot of people get pregnant before they even get married, and they have sex before they even have to get married, and kids are getting born everywhere, especially in third world countries. Because I mean, I understand that in first world countries, they have this crazy idea that there's a lot of people on earth and they shouldn't have kids and all that stuff. That's a topic for another day. But right now, I'm just trying to talk about the family unit. Is it still necessary in its original form, the form with which we grew up with which we grew up with, the form that was developed many, many ages ago? If we look at the animal kingdom, and of course, I do not want to simplify human beings to mere animals, but many different family constructs exist among many different species of animals. All of them work and operate in different ways. I think human beings are so sophisticated that they can operate not necessarily as a single species, but they can operate as if they're multiple species. There are people who can decide, I want to be like a dove. I'm going to marry one person and I'm going to stay with that person and we're going to raise our kids together. I guess there are some people who can say, I want to be like a lion. I want to have a couple of women that I have around me. Maybe there'll be another male lion within our pack that's going to be, the protectors of this unit that we're building, and we're gonna have kids, and we're gonna progress life that way. There's probably certain people who are gonna be like, I want to be like the black widow spider. Whoever comes and sleeps with me and impregnates me, I'm gonna kill them. Perhaps not legal, but you get the point that I'm going for. The variation that we have through our intellect, I think, allows us to imagine and desire things differently. And I think that the laws and the cultures and the traditions need to be adapted and evolved to suit that. I think I've spoken before about the attention span, and maybe I didn't say it this way, the attention span of the human being these days being so short, and not necessarily short because of a backward evolutionary adaptation, but I think it is because of the speed at which information moves today. In order for you to meet a different person 500 years ago, it would take you so many days. You literally meet a lot of different people today just by scrolling through your phone. So I may be interested in one person today, but tomorrow I may be interested in another. We see examples of people who have kids, they've slept with females, but then suddenly, well, not suddenly, but then they realize that actually this is not what I wanted my whole life. Now I want this. And I think that the reason that we have a lot of people now cheating on their wives with men, or women cheating on their husbands with women, is because from an early stage we did not accept the possibility that one can actually fall in love with someone of the same sex. Had we accepted such situations earlier, perhaps we would have less divorces taking place because of people having married wrong in the first place. Again, going back to blame this construct that we have built that states or dictates that a man should marry a woman and they should have kids and that is it. Had we not had that, perhaps we'd have less divorces because people probably would have been with the people that they desired from the beginning without necessarily being forced or molded or tried to be force molded into something they're not by a society that sees things in a one-dimensional or the very most two-dimensional way. I think now we should open things up to say, okay, look, what works for you? What do you think is going to work for you? Because I'm probably going to love you today. I'm probably going to love you for the next 5 years. But can we say that I'm going to love you for the next 10 years? I don't know what I'm talking about, but can we even say that I'm going to love women after 10 years? And I'm not necessarily talking about me here, but I'm just saying these are the questions that I think we should construct systems that allow for these sort of dynamics. Because I think that life has become so dynamic that for us to have a static ideology, a static construct of what a family unit should be, I think does not serve us quite well. Children are able to grow up, flourish, be amazing within pretty much any situation. I think a lot of us try to want to build perfect homes, perfect families, so that for the kids, want to do this for the kids. And honestly, my examples in the beginning of the video, or the beginning of the episode, sorry, were meant to show that we have people succeeding coming from different situations, meaning that you do not necessarily need this one situation, this one setting, this one ideology in order for things to go well. And yes, this is an ideology that has perhaps served society very well for ages and ages. I do not deny that. I'm not here saying that there is no merit to that construct. What I am saying, however, is can we open it up? Let that be an option, but let these other constructs be an option too. The same way that a heterosexual monogamous relationship was the norm, that we then opened up to say, okay, a homosexual monogamous relationship is also accepted. Okay, a heterosexual polygamous relationship is accepted. Can we now also just add something else to that and say, you know, as much as yes, there's no actual law against pro co-parenting, as it were, I think that if society started to accept that this is something that people are going to live with, this is something that should be accepted in society. Let us not stigmatize against people who are pregnant and then there's no man around them to help them do whatever. Let's not stigmatize against people who are, you see a man there raising his kid and there's no wife there. Let it be fine. It is fine for that to happen. Let it be fine for two women to raise a kid. And yes, I understand some of these things that I'm saying are normal. They exist. They happen. But the question that I'm asking here is crazy and as trivial, unnecessary as it might seem. Is actually necessary, because when you're raised as a girl, you're still raised to become a wife to a man. When you're raised as a man, you're still raised to become a husband to a woman. I'm just trying to ask, is that necessary? Should we continue to do that? Or should we raise people to become honorable, to become respectful, to become intelligent, to become dreamers, to become dreamers, to become thinkers, so that we can create a better world for ourselves? And when I finally decide that I want kids, or I want to start a family, or this is what I want, I am free. I have the entire spectrum of choices from which to choose, the entire spectrum of options from which to choose. I think is a better construct of that statement. And again, I do not know what I'm talking about. And this is not only the most uninformed episode, but it's also probably the most unstructured video. But this is just me trying to start the question, trying to say, when I go home and my mom asks, so where's your wife? Where's your girlfriend? I'm like, who said I'm gonna get married? Who said I want that? Like, kind of just make a couple of girls pregnant, who are happy to do that, not go around and raping them. No, that is a violation of people's rights and many other things. Can't I just do that? Can't you ask the question differently? So like, okay, what's your plan with your life? Where you going? As my mother, it is fine for you to ask that question, and I'll tell you, okay, I'm thinking of getting a couple of girls that are going to be willing to bear my children, and I'm gonna get them my children, and we're gonna raise them together. We're gonna figure out how we're gonna do that, but we're gonna work on it, and we're gonna make it work. And I believe that we're gonna raise a happy family. Maybe that's what I want. Maybe I don't want to be married to someone who I'm probably going to divorce in 5 or 6 years, because I see that a lot of people are getting divorced out there, not because there's particularly anything wrong with that person, but probably because, time has taken its toll and a lot of information has gone through your mind, and your life expectancy is higher. So the amount of time that you still have to spend with this person is much more than ever was before. And maybe you're like, I don't know, I want to try something different. Because maybe let me close off this way. If you think about it, in your career, in your just everyday life, we always talk about explore new things, maybe try a new career, maybe try a side hustle, maybe, travel to some other area, maybe do all of this. But it seems like we're saying that all these other things can be dynamic, but like there's this thing here that has to be static. And that's the question that I have, that should it be static? It may be, I'm not saying it should. What is that? Has it been there the whole time? Wow. I'm not saying it shouldn't be static. I'm not saying it should be dynamic. I'm saying it should be optional. Or at least, at the very least, can we open up the conversation and start asking these questions? And if you bring it back to the African context, I think we need to start also understanding better the reasons for the things that we do, the traditions, the cultures, the rituals, paying the bride price, which we call the lobola. For us to actually even get married, wearing all these white stuff, white wedding things, and then doing all the traditional things, which is like two traditions, which is very weird, but all those things. And then there's whatever, when we jola, we don't really include anyone in there. We just go out, we start kissing, we start sending each other love letters, we start laying together, we start having sex. But then for some reason, at some point, we decide we're going to bring in the law into this. We're going to bring in our parents into this. And perhaps it's fine to bring in our parents because they're part of our lives and everything. But why the heck are you going to bring in the law into it, Because then now you guys separate, and could just be a simple thing of like, you guys are just, letting go of each other. And then maybe because you guys are still detached, you're going to have some, do I call it breakup sex? That letting go sex, and then eventually you guys are apart when it's done. But then, man, because y'all included the law, and then there's like paperwork, and now in order to get divorced, you can't just say it's over, or just change it, I might disappear. You have to now call some guy or some woman who's been doing this stuff for years, who's going to pay to take your stuff away and give it to the other person that you hate now because you're trying to get away from them. I just feel like all of that is unnecessary. And that's why I'm asking these questions. Is this ideal family unit still necessary? Do we still need to uphold that? Last thing to say, there's a guy who was accused of being afraid of commitment. And he posed a very, very, very interesting question in my eyes. And his question was, why are we assuming that commitment is the default setting for human beings? Why are we assuming that a human being is innately evolved to commit to one person? Evidence suggests that mankind isn't adopted for that. What has perhaps allowed us to do that for so long is perhaps cultural and societal responsibility. But I think that in this world we live in now, we may want to question that and relook it and rethink it, and maybe throw it in the bin. This went on for much longer than I was hoping for. I think for some reason, for some questions, there may not actually be an answer. Maybe this is the last thing I want to say. I've said to some people that I actually want to have a lot of kids. And someone has asked me, wouldn't you want to divorce? Because not divorce, sorry, adopt, because you still have a lot of kids there. And, I don't really have an actual solid reason to want paternity over my kids than to just adopt kids. But then at the same time, even if you just want one kid, or if you just not want a kid, I think any reason you can give is not solid enough. So my point is, I don't think some questions actually have actual answers. And even the question I'm posing here today may not have an actual answer, but that may just be the point. But I still do not know what I'm talking about. And whatever I'm saying here today is simply just to get us to get talking, get us to get arguing about it. Let us engage the elderly, the young people. What do you think? Where are you going with this? The same way we sort of accepted or started talking about and started communicating about homosexuality. I think let's also look at this stuff, the marriage, the family unit, that type of construct, and how it works, how it should work, how can it work, how it may work.